difficult it is for the government to be, dealing with the air pollution issue. But at the same time, we see that there are initiatives from the Punjab government, from the federal government, which are beginning to understand the importance of this issue as well. I would take a few minutes to, put a lay of the land and comes to the issue of air pollution. Before, I think, the early 90s, there was very little concern about air pollution in Pakistan. I had the chance of, authoring a report, and there was very little data in the 90s about Pakistani cities. But there was this report from the Norwegian mission to Pakistan, and Norway was financing a water treatment plant. And as one of their SOPs, they do the local monitoring, and air was one of those components. And for PM 2.5, there was no concern at that point. There was something called total suspended particulate, which is PM 50 for simplified terms. And for Lahore, it was 854 in 1992. So, and this is not part of any government databases. Fast forward to 1997, we have the Pakistan Environment Protection Act, which recognized air pollution as a major issue. Again, there was no monitoring that started immediately after this. And then eventually in 2006 and 7, you had the first episode of air pollution, and the Punjab Clean Air Plan was delivered, which is where the ban on two-stroke engine rickshaws came in. Soon after 2007, we had the CNG boom, and for a few years, we were able to hide the pollution-causing transport sectors, industrial sectors, by using cleaner gas, which we eventually ran out of in 2012. And that is really when we start to see the air pollution in cities like Lahore, broader Punjab and Peshawar, Islamabad really come into our face, because this is when we restored the norm to regular fuels. This was the reality, that we had gone beyond what was supposed to be our limit in terms of using fossil fuels, especially clean fossil fuel, if there is such thing as clean fuels. And this is when I also came across this article in late 2012. A lawyer who was earlier here speaking at one of the panels, Rafe, wanted to start going to the Lahore High Court on his bicycle, and then that's when he felt sick and realized the air is bad. 2017 saw a smog commission. Justice Mansoor Ali Shah led that, and eventually we found out that there is literally no data about the air pollution problem. And that is where solutions started to come. And my colleague Abid is here. He was one of the first who decided to look at this issue from a scientific lens. Then we have seen recently that the Punjab Urban Unit, which is led by Dr. Umar Masood, who is sitting right next here, and then also LUMS Energy Institute, which started to develop solutions around, especially mobility, transport as the big sector. So this is the context of our discussion, that you have a serious air pollution crisis. You know some of the sectors causing it, and you also have some data. But what are the solutions, and how do we bring it together to create a management framework, not just for Punjab, but at the national level, to really resolve this air pollution crisis? So to start off, I think I would go to Dr. Naveed Arshad, especially given that he has the institution, LUMS Energy Institution, has been instrumental in developing Pakistan's new energy vehicle policy. They were supported the electric vehicle policy as well. And putting that into the context, given that energy and transport we know are key emitters to air pollution, what do you think, how are institutions like LEI informing policies, especially when it comes to the major sectors? So over to you, Dr. Saab.
Thank you, Dawar. So LUMS Energy Institute, actually, our motto is to look at the whole energy ecosystem, which not only looks at the power sector, but also the loads and also some of the innovations that are happening. And then map it to the challenges that we are facing in our country, develop our own feasibility, pre-feasibility, you can say, and then go to the government and do some policy advocacy. The good thing is that across all the governments we work, there has been champions that have actually adopted those ideas, the policies, national electricity policy, new energy vehicle policy, energy efficiency policy, all of them had some contributions from there. But policy is just a piece of paper. Unless you go into implementation of it, it remains very nicely published, quite nicely written papers. So the goal of Energy Institute is to help with the government and the private sector to actually implement these solutions. Because if you are looking at the changes that we are seeing in terms of specifically transport, electric vehicle is not a different form of transport, it's a paradigm change. Paradigm change in terms of how do you introduce those vehicles, how do you fuel those vehicles with electricity, and how do you make sure that they don't become an afterlife problem. So our goal is to look at it holistically and look at all the complete life cycle. Together with that, there is very important aspect. Technology is one, policy is one, but the third one is the business side of things. Sometime you can map it to existing business models, but sometime you cannot. For example, in EVs, if you go with the existing business model of converting fuel station to electric charging station, it may not work because EVs take a long time in charging, especially the one with fixed batteries. So you have to come up with a different solution. Maybe you have those charging stations at locations where people spend more time. Charging can be performed at home, at offices, at wherever you are stopping for a longer time. So that paradigm shift needs to come. And finally, you have all that regulatory aspects also that comes with it, that if you are bringing an EV, the quality of the vehicle should be good, the battery should be safe, it should not become you can say, public safety and health safety should not be compromised. So LEI looks at the problem holistically. It turns out that after electricity, the next big thing that we have been working with the government and the private sector is transport. And then there are other, you can say, segments where we are contributing. So I'll stop here.
My next question to Dr. Umar Masood from Urban Unit. I think Urban Unit holds a very unique position in the overall governance paradigm, that it's a government-owned entity, and it is able to do a lot of scientific evidence and knowledge creation because it has talent and resources. And I think over the last few years, we've seen the spatial mapping work Urban Unit has done, a lot of work around climate as well, and especially on cities. So this is a key issue, that urban emissions are understudied. And Urban Unit is also, along with Pakistani Air Quality Initiative and Punjab University, one of the winners of the EPIC Air Quality Award. And it is studying these ground-level, city-level emissions. So, Umar Saab, I think really question here is that you already know a lot of these challenges. You've done it for cities, some cities in Punjab. Do you think that research is really driving interest in changes in policy? And can it be replicated at the national level as well?
Thank you. First thing first, the Urban Unit was meant for urban planning. We were not doing much of urban planning, so we decided to branch into data. So let me make that confession that this happened by chance. Because spatially we had the GIS resources, and what we did is that we are simply mapping the sensor. Initially the sensors were not of the Urban Unit, but when we got the award from University of Chicago, we have got now 160 sensors all over Pakistan which are supplying us with air quality data and some other NOx-SOx. But other than that, whether it is making an impact, yes, it is making an impact, because sometimes policy does not happen from top down, it happens from bottom up. And you know, the sensor data, whether it is low-cost sensor data or whether it is high-quality sensor data, the ordinary citizens, you will see social media taking up this sensor data and talking about it. So saying that the sensor data or this monitoring of air quality is not having an impact, I think it is definitely having an impact. But how do you sort of now reorient this data into policy and into actions? So first of all, I think because it is a bottom-up approach, I think local action is now being increasingly driven at the city level by the monitoring data that they have from these sensors, whether they are the Urban Unit sensors, whether they are privately owned sensors, or whether they are of the Environment Protection Department and climate change. So sensors are definitely making a difference as far as local administrative action is concerned. I think we are about to come to a crossroad when it comes to sensor level monitoring. This is one thing I and Abid were just discussing in the green room. is we need cooperation and integration, and we need less of competition. So there are now going to be many data streams which we would be seeing in this season and perhaps in coming years, which will be telling us about the quality of our air in our surroundings. Now it is up to the government, and it is also up to the non-governmental sector that how they join forces together to integrate this data, because as data grows large, you are able to analyze it, you are able to decipher patterns, you are then able to do the necessary forecasting. And I think the citizenry at large would also come to recognize this data as something which happens on a year-to-year basis. Now we are advertising, or we are trying to publish this data as much as possible openly, so that the citizens are aware of it, that what do we mean by a data point which is saying this is your air quality. What does it mean for the citizen? What does 147 means as compared to 347? Yes, we have got those bands, but I think we need to sort of communicate it better. So while monitoring data is now up and about, we are still facing the challenge of integrating into policy. There are issues of censor regulations that Abid would also, talk about. And then there is the biggest challenge is actually communicating this data to people that I'm seeing in front of us. Without behavioral change, you cannot tackle the problem of air quality. And behavioral change can only come about if necessary information is presented in a very cogent way, so that people understand what is the meaning of poor air quality. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Umar. I think moving on to the role that Abid has been playing through Pakistan Air Quality Initiative, we heard discussions around how civil society should be more active, and perhaps Paki was the first organization from the civil society which took up this cause that air quality needs more concern back in 2016. And nearly, I think, 10 years later, we do see some movement on air quality solutions. And this is where I think Abid, because he's working with ground level organizations, with corporations and CSRs, and the idea behind air quality is not just knowing that air pollution of a city is this way. It's also very hyper local, meaning me sitting right now in the expo center wants to know what's the air quality here. And similarly, someone residing all the way in cantonment wants to know the air quality, how it is there. So how is hyperlocal data is performing at the city level, and what have you found out recently in terms of using hyperlocal data for emissions mapping? Can it really help us make ground level policy that can transform cities towards the better?
Thank you so much, David. Is this on? Radio check? Is it on?
Yeah, I think
okay. So thank you so much for that question, and for the audience for taking the time to stay out here till the end. I see many people have come from far away. There's a lot of talk about data and the quality of data. Look, I always tell people how many data points you need. You just need the one monitor, the one data point for one city, and after that, you need the second one to tell you if the first one is telling you the truth or not. And the third, fourth, 10th, 100th, or 1000th one is not going to give you any new information. That activity becomes academic, it becomes scientific. It is what we are working on, what Urban Unit has also published. The government also mentioned this morning things like source apportionment studies, chemical speciation, emissions inventories, all which are even more important than the data that we have today. And that work, unfortunately, is not being done in Pakistan of the level that it should be, which leads to the policy making that we see today. A lot of the actions we saw were implemented last year's smog season under the smog mitigation plan. where a lot of industry was sealed and vehicle inspection began and brick kilns started being demolished. But you saw the results of that activity, where in Multan we had AQI of I think 1,800 and in parts of Lahore of 2,400. So even if the monitors are off by 50, 60, 70%, they're telling you that the air quality is hazardous. And even if the monitors weren't there, you can breathe it. You can see it in the hospital admissions rates. The Punjab Health Department last year said in November there were an extra 1.83 million hospital admissions in Lahore alone, which is 15% of the population of Lahore went to hospital, more than they do normally. So I think it's time to go beyond talking about what regulatory data or low-cost data or who's providing the data is telling us, and think about what the policies should be. Whereas even today in Pakistan, in the Punjab government, the policy making is still weak. No matter what we heard today, it's because the evidence base in more advanced areas is not mature enough.